Hello, my name is Rich Lilly with Project Leadership Associates. Today we're going to be talking about Azure Infrastructure as a Service backup. One of the biggest gaps in deploying services to the Azure IaaS platform has been backup of those infrastructure as a service virtual machines. Microsoft has solved this by releasing an agentless Azure Infrastructure as a Service backup agent. This covers 4 major scenarios. 1, recovery of a VM in case of a VM deletion. 2, recovery of a VM in case of a data loss inside of a virtual machine. 3, recovery of a VM in case of a VM corruption. And 4, creating a copy of a VM from an older point in time and be able to deploy that to another location within Azure. What is Azure Infrastructure as a Service backup? It is an application-consistent backup of the virtual machine. What this means is it allows us to get a production-ready backup of these workloads, where previously we were just doing Azure blob snapshots, which were not application-consistent or file-consistent in many cases. This will not require a shutdown of the virtual machine, which with the PowerShell script you did require. And also this provides application-level consistency for Windows operating systems, as well as file system-level consistency for Linux operating systems. This also provides fabric-level backup. So this really provides unlimited scalability with no customer resources required for backup. We don't need to deploy any servers to support a broker or a proxy in Azure for these backups. It allows for an agentless backup of multiple VMs at the same time. So this allows us to process multiple threads at the same time and reduce the amount of time it takes to back up an entire Azure environment. It also provides a single central management interface through the Azure portal. So without actually having to deploy a server and software to support this, this is all going to be done as a service offered in the Azure portal. It also offers detailed jobs view for tracking purposes as well as success failure, so you can track the jobs and their success rates as well. It also offers policy-driven backup and retention, much like we would have through an on-premises service today, including configuration of a scheduled backup, on-demand backup as needed, automatic management of the recovery points within the Azure Backup Vault, which is going to house all your backup data, as well as the ability to retain backup data in Azure even if the original VM is deleted. That way we can really maintain the lifecycle of that VM even after it's gone. Azure Infrastructure as a Service VM backup allows for VM-level backup across multiple disks. As we mentioned, both app-consistent for Windows or disk-consistent with Linux. This allows us to take a single backup policy and apply it across various VMs or systems, as well as be able to trigger backup schedules and manual backups based on need as well. This is all done through an API snapshot extension. As we can see in the process on the right here, we're actually going to go ahead and freeze the VM first, take a VHD snapshot and save that to a blob, defreeze that virtual machine, report the status to the caller service, and then write that log into blob. This is all done behind the scenes without ever having to take any of these services offline, and it's much more efficient than the previous Azure backup processes. One, we need to first discover the VMs within the Azure Fabric, and this is a simple discovery process that we can then go out and select the VMs for the registration process, which is next. So in this case, we actually choose to register those virtual machines, which is a one-step install in that backup. This is a one-step install with that backup service on that server and is preparing those VMs for that backup. And last but not least is the protection. So in this case, now we have it registered, we can go ahead and apply a policy and kick off our initial backup to make sure our data is protected to our Azure Backup Vault. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the configuration of Azure Backup in the Azure portal. In this case, we've already gone ahead and created a backup vault to house our Azure Backup data. So we're going to go ahead and select on the Azure Backup here. And you can see when this loads, we'll see the usage overview of what's being used. We can have, one Azure virtual machine that's registered in this cloud, as well as about 13.71 gig of backed up data from the existing VM I have in here already. Let's actually go take a look at the registered items. In this case, we've already gone through a registration of the VMs in our Azure environment today. We'll take the drop down and choose our Azure virtual machine and choose the status of all. And we can see here that my Azure DC is actually the one that I'm backing up already. At the bottom of this pane of glass, you can see I can also go through another discovery, registration, protection, or unregister process. So we're actually going to go ahead and register a new virtual machine. In this case, we're going to actually go ahead and back up another VM called AZGNS3. In this case, we've gone ahead and selected that virtual machine. And once that registration is complete, we're going to get that item in now the protected items container. So in this case, we're going to go back and drop that down to Azure Virtual Machines. And you can see here in my already protected VM, my other one will come up in just a minute, we're actually already protecting this virtual machine. You can see one recovery point. In addition, from this machine that's already has been registered, I can go ahead and initiate a manual backup now. I can also stop protection, or I can restore data from this virtual machine as well. If I click on the VM that's already being backed up, we can also see the backup details as well as the backup policy that's being applied. From here, I can also change that backup policy to one of the other ones. Let's actually go take a look at one of these backup policies. In this case, I have a standard backup policy job that runs every night at 11 p.m. It's a fairly straightforward job, and as we go and click on that job, we can see that it's just the backup frequency is set down here to daily at 11 p.m., and I'm actually choosing just to retain 14 days. In this case, we can also change it to however many weeks we want to retain data as well. And I can have as many as these policies as I want, and I can also apply these policies dynamically to the protected servers. In addition, I can go over here to the jobs pane and see the jobs I've completed recently. As you can see from last night, I registered a new VM in our Azure subscription, as well as configured that. And then I backed that up at 11 p.m. last night due to a job. So you can see that the first backup of that 13 gigabytes of data took about 47 minutes. And as you can see here, our registration job is running on our new virtual machine. This really makes it very easy to manage Azure backup as a whole in one single pane of glass and really have a single source of truth for all backups that are sitting in your Azure environment. This concludes our session on Azure Infrastructure as a Service backup. Thank you for attending today's session on Azure Infrastructure as a Service backup. My name is Rich Lilly with Project Leadership Associates. You can reach me at rlilly@projectleadership.net or on Twitter at @RichLilly. Thank you.